So for those of you who I've never met, maybe in the room, but also maybe online, my name is Richard. I'm one of the leaders here. It is so great to be able to be with you and really kind of just hopefully be able to deliver something of God, wanting to really speak to you. Now, I don't know where you're at. I don't know what's going on, but there's a reality that's worked out in my life over the last 56 plus weeks that's really kind of changed some of my thinking, and I call it the mask crisis. Now, if you're anything like me, you may have experienced this, maybe you haven't, but for me, the mask crisis is when you reach that point. Let's say your wife or significant other has said to you, you must go and get milk. You need to go out and get some milk and bread from the shop, and you get there. Now, for the last 56 weeks, no matter where you've gone, you know you need one of these masks to take with you. You can't walk into a building, you can't use a toilet, you can't speak to somebody, you can't go do school pickup. You literally can do nothing in life without one of these, but you arrive at the shop, potentially because you totally forgot that you were supposed to pick up milk and bread. That's not my case, but just for relational sake. And you realize what you don't have with you is one of these. And you face a mask crisis. You end up becoming so desperate to get in the shop, you end up being one of a few people. The first person is the person who, with confidence and boldness, tries to pretend like they're exempt, even though they're not. The best way to do this is to confidently walk into the shop and not care what anybody else thinks. But it's dishonest if you're not exempt, and so I'm not encouraging that, but I'm just saying you know those people. Then there are these people, and I'm sure some of you in this room will identify with this. This ain't a mask. This is a shirt that I'm pretending is a mask, and if you do any significant amount of shopping like this, you end up with back and neck problems. But you know those people, you know who I'm talking about. Then you end up being another person who tries to make a mask. Dom was telling me that the one time early on in the COVID season, he needed a mask and he couldn't find one, but what he did have in his car were 2 cable ties. And so he thought, what item of clothing do I have that could resemble a mask? And so there, sockless, he walked into a shopping center using his sock and 2 cable ties, and he fashioned his own mask. But if you're anything like me, you know there's that point when desperation takes hold. It grabs a hold of you, and you're like, I need to get into the shop. And something happens in your thinking that you've never experienced before. You look down, and there maybe is your wife's mask. And you think, can't be that bad. I could take this mask and wear it. It may have some flowers in it. It may look pretty. People will just think, I'm eccentric. I could get away with it. Or, and I'm just leveling here with you, I haven't preached in about 56 weeks. I'm just going to be vulnerable and open myself up. You look outside your door, and there on the floor, come on, we've all been there. You know what I'm saying. For a split moment, you think to yourself, it'll be fine. I'll be all right. I can do that. Or you happen to be walking past a bin. No one is around. It's just you. You are desperate to get into the shop, though. You need that bread and milk. And there is what you really need. Just sitting on the top. It doesn't look too bad. It's a little bit stained, but that's okay. Everybody wears different colored masks. We're all fine. And just for a split second, in your desperation, you think, this can work. This can work. Now, just for clarity, I've never, ever taken a mask out of bin or picked one up off the ground and worn it, just in case people are thinking I have. But this mask crisis really reveals something that I really think is deep inside of us, that in our desperation, we can end up doing some crazy, crazy things. Things we would never expect to do. Now, I couldn't think of a good transition to go from wearing other people's masks or strangers' masks or masks you were picking up off the ground to what I wanted to say next. So I used this as my transition. Have you ever written yourself a bucket list? Something you want to do before you die. Make of that transition of what you like from wearing someone else's mask during a pandemic to a bucket list. But here we're at the bucket list. And one of the things on my bucket list is I want to go and see the Northern Lights. I would love to go and experience it. I think it must be an amazing experience. And people tell me the further up north you go, north, that way you go on the map, to see the northern lights, the more you'll begin to see icebergs. And what you're going to see is two different kinds of icebergs. You're going to see small icebergs and these ginormous icebergs. And if you watch closely, the same icebergs that are in the same set of water but of different sizes will actually be moving in different directions. Now, there's a scientific reason for this, which I do not know because I'm not a scientist. So here's my butchered explanation of what's going on. Surface winds blowing across the ocean are pushing the small icebergs in one way. But deep ocean currents are busy driving the bigger, ginormous icebergs in a different way. So in the same set of water, there are these two icebergs that could be moving in two different directions. And I think the same is true for our lives. I think desperation, which can be caused by our life circumstance, ends up being the surface winds of our lives, driving us in one direction. But devotion to God can end up being the deep ocean current that actually drives us in a different direction. And oftentimes our desperation or our devotion move us in very different directions. And if you're writing notes, and if you're at home writing notes, or you're in Life Church, wherever you are, write this down. I am convinced that God does not want you to lead a life of desperation, but He does want you to lead a life of devotion. God doesn't want you to lead a life of desperation, but rather of devotion. And we're right in the middle of a series on the Holy Spirit, and I have a real kind of passion over this and a real conviction that if you want to see the Spirit manifest or come out or experientially be present in your life powerfully, if you want to see the Spirit move powerfully through you so that God is glorified, if you want to see the Everyday Supernatural, which is a book we're busy doing in our small group, and if you're not in a small group, you should get into one, moving every day, so you're seeing these powerful moments of God using you through His Holy Spirit in your everyday, you will find that power not in desperation, but in devotion. Devotion to God. Now, I grew up in South Africa, and when I was really young, I saw this phenomenon, which I thought was kind of just a South African phenomenon. I've later on realized they do it all over the world, but at the time, I thought it was quite unique to South Africa. What they would do is, in the summer months when things got really dry, once the grass was really dry and brown and kind of withered, people would come along and they would light the grass on fire. And the first time I saw this, I thought it was crazy because everything in you is going, put out the fire. You don't light a fire and go, great, let's just let this burn and see what happens. So you want to kind of go over and put it out. But these people would light the fire and then just let the fire burn. And sometimes for hours, sometimes for days, sometimes even weeks, it would just slowly burn and destroy all of the grass. It's crazy. You're going, the rainy season is just around the corner. Surely you should just wait, let the kind of rain start falling, and the grass will grow again, and everything will look pretty and nice. But there they were, lighting it and burning it. And so I thought it was so counterintuitive. I was so young. So I went to speak to one of them to try and understand what was going on. And what they told me is, they said, when the grass is really dry and they light it on fire and they let it burns all the way down to the root. And after burning down to the root, it means the new shoots that grow will be healthier and stronger. Actually, by letting it burn, life will emerge. And it was kind of interesting to me. It felt so counterintuitive, so not what you would expect. So by letting something burn, new life would emerge. And the more I spoke to them, the more they began to explain to me that actually life is in the burning. And the burning can take a long time. But you have to wait till the grass is really dry if you want to make it catch fire quickly. And the more I think about it, the more I think that's absolutely true for our lives. When we are dry, we can catch fire really quickly. But in catching fire, that isn't the life. The life is in the long burn. That's the life. That's where life emerges. And oftentimes as Christians, we speak about going through dry spells. Maybe you, over the COVID period, have experienced a dry spell. I mean, we haven't had church for ages. You then do get to come to church, and you have to still sit with exactly the same people you were sitting with in your house before you came to church. You couldn't really talk to anyone else. You have to wear a face covering. You can't really sing. You can't hug. You can't do everything that church could do before. You have to pre-register to actually get here. And if you arrive and you haven't, there might not be space. And all of these things could produce a point in you where you're just going, I feel so dry. I feel so far. Maybe from waking up and spending all of your time in your pajamas, going to work in your pajamas, sitting around in your pajamas, literally living in your pajamas. Certain habits have gotten away for you, like reading the Bible or just spending time in your own private worship, and you go, wow, I'm so dry. I haven't had any kind of food or feeding. Maybe even watching this online, you've thought to yourself, you know what, this is a lot of effort. I'd rather be watching Ukraine get whipped 4-0, or I don't know what else is on, really. Wimbledon, apparently. I don't know if that's even going. I haven't heard a thing. Who knows? But like, you could be feeling like, actually, you know what? This is just too hard, and you feel really dry. And in your dryness, it's like desperation. God, I'll take anything. I need anything. Just do anything. And that's the thing, is that it's really quick to catch a light. You come down here and Phil's singing, you are worthy of it all. And his baritone voice goes out, you are worthy of it all. And everybody's hands go up in the air, and we're like, yes, yes, Lord, you are worthy of it all. Woo! Amazing, amazing. And you're feeling something. And it stops. And like me, when I first saw the fire, you think, I got to put that out. It's not great. Let me stomp that bad boy right down. It's easy to catch a light when you're desperate. But the life isn't in catching a light. The life is in the burning. You see, God isn't wanting you to live a life of desperation. I'm desperate for you now, God. I just need you to do something. I've tried everything. God's going, no, I want you to live a life of devotion. A life of devotion. There was a paratrooper. It's a person who jumps out of airplanes for the army and kind of takes soldiers and they go and fight. And he was really high up, and he was teaching a whole lot of young recruits about being a paratrooper. And when he's finished his teaching, one of the recruits looked at him and said, why did you jump out of the plane in the first place? What was the thing that made you first jump out of the plane? And the paratrooper looked and said, well, we were 20,000 feet in the air, and 3 out of our 4 engines were shot down. I had to jump. That's desperation. The recruit went on to say, well, why do you keep jumping out of airplanes? And this paratrooper had a look and said, I keep jumping out because I know what I'm called to do. That's devotion. It's two very different things at play. And I think if we become people who are driven by driven by desperation, certain things start to work out into our lives. Now, normally 4 things make us desperate. The first thing is distance. Distance creates desperation inside of us. If you wouldn't guess it looking at me, but I'm not really an athlete. I know that that's hard to fathom, but I'm not a great long distance or short distance or medium distance or any distance type of runner. And the minute I start running, I immediately am desperate for the end. The distance between starting to the end creates a massive amount of desperation in me. Actually, any time that there is distance between where you are and where you think you need to be, there will be a sense of desperation that could start to emerge. And that desperation can look in different ways. Even over lockdown, it's really interesting. Distance caused many couples to become quite desperate. They became really difficult to go, the person that I'm next to, I feel so far away from, even though we're in the same room. That distance creates desperation. But not only does distance create desperation, so does desertion, that feeling of alone and abandonment. I remember this clearly. It was quite traumatic. One day, my mom forgot to pick me up from school. Now, when I grew up in South Africa, it's not like here where if you don't pick up your kid, they take them to the office and someone phones you and then scolds you on the phone and says, we'll watch your kid till you come and get them. In South Africa, what they would do is they would take you, they would walk down to the school gate, they would put you on the other side of the school gate, and they would walk away. And there I was, in primary school, standing on the other side of the school gate, waiting for my mom to come and pick me up. Now, we ended school at 2:15. My mom didn't pick me up until 5 p.m. And I stood outside that gate from 2:15 till 5 p.m. Desperation taken hold. My mom had thought someone else had picked me up. She wasn't just like, I don't like you, unlucky, just for clarity in the room and online. I'm sure somebody loves me. Whoop, whoop. Okay, so here's someone else to pick me up. And I remember that feeling of like isolation, alonement, abandonment, and how the desperation started to grow inside of me. Every car turning in. Is this her car? Oh, no, it isn't. But maybe she bought a new one that I don't know. It could well be, but it wasn't. But actually, not just distance, but that whole idea of us ending up feeling like we're deserted ends up also kind of growing this desperation in our lives. Depression creates desperation. That overwhelming sense of, I just can't continue. I don't know what to do next. I don't know where to go to. I don't know how this is going to work out. I don't know how to solve this. I don't know how to fix this. It begins to kind of create this desperation in us. And finally, defeat. I was watching football with my daughter yesterday, and she asked me this question: why do they keep swapping out the good players once they've gotten all these goals? Surely you'd keep all the good players on. And the only response I had was going, no, well, because the Ukrainians are now going to be defeated, they're going to get desperate, which means they're going to start taking more risks and playing in different ways, and different things will start to work out. And so they need to get some of the good players off because they need them for the next game at Wembley, where hopefully they win. Whoop, whoop. I thought there'd be more response in the room. I just thought people would spontaneously break out into some kind of chorus. They haven't. Online, they haven't. No one cares. I care. But like defeat produces desperation, because it's like, well, I'm done. There's nothing else I can do here. And what's interesting is if you take these 4 areas of things that cause desperation, and then you say, well, if I'm a person who's desperate, what is my life characterized by? Distance. Far away from God. God never helps me. God does nothing for me. I don't want anything to do with him. On the side, I love it when people say that Christianity is a crutch, because I'm like, it is absolutely a crutch. And why would you not want it? I don't get it. Why would you not want something to lean on? But actually, distance begins to characterize our lives. When desperation takes hold, we don't draw closer, we move further away. What also characterizes our lives is desertion. When you start to get desperate, you don't push closer to those around you. You actually retreat from them, and you pull further away. Desperation in our lives can become a characteristic like depression. And ultimately, desperation in our lives can end up leading us to a place of defeat. Now, there were these 2 Christian men who were kind of really on in their faith. They were really mature. And they went out fishing one day, and they decided to take with them a young new Christian that had come to their church. And so these 3 guys were out on a fishing boat, busy fishing and talking. And while they were talking, a gust of wind came and blew one of the more mature Christians' men's hat off out of the boat into the lake. And he looked at his hat in the lake, and he simply just stepped out the boat, walked on the water, went and got his hat, came back, stepped back in the boat, put his hat back on, carried on talking. And this young Christian was like, what is that? That's ridiculous. He just walked on water. But the other mature Christian didn't say anything. So this young Christian just kept it to himself, didn't say anything at all, just sat there kind of thinking in his head, I'm desperate for that. I need whatever they've got. That's crazy. Carried on talking. Another gust of wind came, and this other mature Christian's hat blew out the boat onto the water. And he pretty much did the same thing. Got out the boat, walked along, got his hat, picked it up, put it back on his head, got back in the boat, and they just carried on speaking as if nothing had happened. And this young Christian's like, this is crazy. I am so desperate to have what they have. I want it so much that he thought, well, I may as well just do it. It must be just how things work. So he kind of helped his hat on a little bit, knocked it off his head into the water, climbed out the boat. And as he climbed out the boat, he started to breathe water hard. He was sinking to the bottom of the lake. He was fully going for it. He comes up for air and he's gasping for air. And as he's climbing back up into the boat, and these other two mature Christians are helping him on. The one looks at the other one and says, do you think we should have told him there's a sandbar on our side? One pity laugh. Thanks, guys. This is a hard crowd. I'm going to have some water right now, just to cool things down in here, because it is hotting up. You have never, ever looked at somebody who is desperate and gone, I need a lot more of what they got. You have never done that. Nobody tries to emulate desperation. We all try to emulate devotion. You have never gone, you know what I need more in my life? I need to be more desperate. Things just aren't at a point where I'm desperate enough. Let me get more desperate. But you do look at people who have devotion and you go, wow, I need more of what they've got. That old man, I can't remember his name, who did like 1,000 kilometers on his walker. What's his name? Captain Tom. That's devotion. It's not desperation. It's devotion. He got a gold badge from Blue Peter. Sweet. People didn't look and go, wow, he's really desperate for people to get money. Great. Let's give him a gold badge. They went, that's devotion. He's walking, I don't know, like how many miles that guy walked around his house. We want to emulate people who have devotion. And God wants you to live a life of devotion and not a life of desperation. Because if you want to see the Holy Spirit move powerfully in your life, you've got to be living a life of devotion. So we're going to have a look at a Bible passage. If you've got it, Psalm 142 is where we're going to. It'll be up on the screen. If you're at home, you can have a look in the Bible passage. And David, who's been kind of anointed to be king, he's been told by a prophet, he's going to become the king of this nation, is in a place where he has no friends with him. People are chasing him, trying to kill him, because the current king at the time is a guy called Saul. And Saul is going, I don't want David to take away the power that I have. So he's becoming behind David to take him away and to try and kill him. And David runs away and he ends up inside of a cave all on his own. Now, I don't know about you, but that could be a really interesting place to get to, and it must create a level of desperation in your life. Everybody around me is my enemy. I'm far away from where I need to be. I've been deserted. I have distance. I'm all alone. No one cares. Depression. And basically, I'm about to be killed by somebody else as I hide away in a hole. Defeat. And in Psalm 142, in this circumstance, David prays this prayer. And what he says is he says this, I cry aloud to the Lord, I lift up my voice to the Lord for mercy. I pour out before him my complaint, before him I tell my trouble. When my spirit grows faint within me, it is you who watch over my way. In the path where I walk, people have hidden a snare for me. Look and see, there is no one at my right hand, there is no one concerned for me, I have no refugee. No one cares for my life. I cry to you, Lord. I say, you are my refuge, my portion in the land of the living. Listen to my cry, for I am in desperate need. Rescue me from those who pursue me, for they are too strong for me. Set me free from my prison, that I may praise your name. Then the righteous will gather about me because of your goodness to me. It's easy to go, that must just be a prayer of a desperate man in a desperate situation. But I think when you deconstruct it, you see something very different at work in David's prayer. Look at this, verse 1 and 2. I cry aloud to the Lord. I lift up my voice to the Lord for mercy. I pour out before him my complaint. Before him, I tell my trouble. David doesn't start this by going, God, I've tried everything. I've done everything. I've really tried to achieve everything I need to. I've taken this as far as I can go. I've put all of the effort in that I can. I've come up with every plan I can do. And now, God, I have nothing. It's not working. I'm in this spiral of desperation, and there is this distance, and I feel defeated, and all of this stuff is going on. And so I really just need you to come and do anything. No, it starts off by him saying, I'm coming to you, Lord. I cry aloud to you. And that term Lord is actually really important, because Lord implies a relational connection. It's one that's positional, and it's one that's covenantal. I make a covenant with someone because I'm prepared to call them Lord, and positionally I'm saying I place you above everything. And David comes, and his starting point is simply this: God, I come to you. I come to you because I need you to come and do what only you can do. It's a statement of devotion. It's a statement of devotion and not desperation. He's not sitting there trying to look at God and go, I'm so desperate for something, I need you to do something. Actually, David's life is characterized by him living a devoted life. Even when he stuffs up, his devotion drives him to make amends and repent and do crazy things for God. And so David comes, and he starts off not going, everything's stuffed up, God, I need you to try and come now and do something and fix it. He starts off by going, I'm crying out to you, Lord. It's a statement of devotion. He then moves on. If you have a look, verses 3, when my spirit grows faint within me, it is you who watches over my way. In the path where I walk, people have hidden a snare for me. So when my spirit grows faint within me, when people around are trying to trap me, it's you. It's you who are watching me. It's you who are looking out for me. It's a statement of devotion. It's really interesting in church right now. People finding it really hard to sing, finding it really hard to pray, finding it really hard to do all of these things. This guy's in a cave. He's in a hole by himself. And his response is, it's all about you. It's worthy for you. Who knows what's going to happen? Maybe next week they say, hey, all of the restrictions are lifted. Woohoo! Maybe they say we're going back into a 5th lockdown or 10th. I don't even know what number we're on anymore. Our response shouldn't be a cry of desperation. It should just be an outpouring of our devotion to God. Whether I have a mask on or not, I can praise you. Whether I'm in the room or not, I can praise you. Whether I'm here or at home, I can still worship you. I am devoted to you. These circumstances don't define my devotion. God doesn't want you to live a life of desperation, but a life of devotion. David carries on. And in verses 4, he says, look and see, there is no one at my right hand. No one is concerned for me. I have no refuge. No one cares for my life. Verse 5, I cry to you, Lord, and I say, you are my refuge, my portion in the land of the living. I hope you're beginning to see a pattern emerge here. What could be desperation is David turning into devotion. I will not let distance define how I push forward. I will not let desertion define how I push forward. I will not let depression define how I push forward. Actually, my devotion will simply be to you, Lord, to you, Lord, to you, Lord, to you, Lord, no matter what the circumstance is. And then you hit verse 6. Listen to my cry, for I am in desperate need. It's hard to say he's not desperate when he says I'm in desperate need, but we'll work a way around that. No, I'm joking. Not a lot of laughter for that either. Great. Listen, I'm in desperate need. Rescue me from those who pursue me, for they are too strong for me. Set me free from my prison, that I may praise your name. And then the righteous will gather about me because of your goodness to me. Even at the end point where defeat looks like it can take hold. The number 4 in our little thing of desperation. David's response is simply this. Do you see it? Do you see it? So set me free from my prison, that I can praise your name. It's one of devotion. Set me free so I can praise your name with those other people around me. It's just a devotion. And here's the thing, is it's easy to catch fire in your desperation, but it's in the burning that life is found. I'm going to invite Phil to come on up. There were these 3 women in a small group, and if you're not in a small group, you should really get into a small group. It's really a good place to connect and journey with people. And in their small group, they were looking at Malachi 3:3, and Malachi 3:3 talks about the reality of God being like a refiner, busy refining silver to make it pure. And it says, he sits at the fire refining the silver. And as they thought about Malachi 3:3 in their small group, they didn't really understand what it meant. And so they went and they said, one of them said, you know what, I'm going to commit this week to go find out what we're talking about in that. And so she went and she knew somebody who was a silver refiner. What are we saying here? Don't know. A person who's a silversmith and refines silver. And they said, you can come in and sit and watch how we do it. And she didn't tell them what she was doing, but she went in and she watched them. And as she watched them, she saw them take the silver that was all impure and put them into this like refiner's type cup and put it into the flame and hold it over the flame. And slowly the silver started melting and all this impurity started to come out. And the silversmith refiner looked at her and said, the key to make this really work is you have to hold this thing over the hottest part of the flame that there is. It has to go right in the middle of the fire. That way, the most impurities will come out. And she sat there thinking, wow, so God is sitting like a refiner, refining us, putting us to the hottest part of the fire. So all of the impurity is burnt away and comes out. She's all like, wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. Right in the hottest part of it. Not on the edge, not around the sides, not where it might, right in the middle of it. But she was all like, it's weird because it says that he sits like a refiner. And she watched this guy refining the silver. And he sat on the edge of the fire holding this. And she said, do you have to sit here all the time? And he said, no, I don't just have to sit here. I have to watch the silver all the time. Never take my eyes off the silver. She's like, why? He goes, because even if it goes too long in that fire for a moment, it will be ruined. She thought, wow. So not only does God put us into the hottest part of the fire to refine us, but he sits and he watches carefully. He watches to make sure it doesn't go for a moment too long. So it's ruined. She was like, this is amazing. And then the silversmith said to her, do you want to know how I know when the silver's ready? And she's like, yeah, definitely. How do you do it? And he says, well, I sit here. I put the silver into the hottest part of the fire. I watch all the impurities burn off. I keep my eyes on it. And I know it's ready when I see my reflection in it. Life is found in the burning. It's in the devotion. Where when every day we're pushing after God, we're going after God, we're opening ourselves up to his spirit and saying, come and use me. Come and work in me. I don't really care what the circumstance is. Just come and carry on, God. I'm going to carry on. You carry on. And when you do that, God is going, you may be in the hottest part of the fire, but it's okay because my eyes are on you all the time. And what I'm looking for is that I will see my image reflected back at me. God does not want you to live a life of desperation, where you're coming, going, I need the Holy Spirit now, please. And he comes because when you're dry, you will catch fire really quickly. But it's about the burn, the long burn. So you find life, real life, with God going, I'm holding you in the hottest part of the fire. I know it sucks, but the impurity is going. It's going. Life is going to come. And as you're ready, he goes, that's it. I see me. I see me in you now. I see myself reflected back. I see myself reflected back. Don't live a life of desperation. Live a life of devotion. Live a life of devotion. I'm going to invite the band up. I'm going to invite you to stand up where you are. Right now, I'm going to ask you, not out loud, but just inside of yourself. And if you're at home and you're sitting on your sofa, that's cool. Don't feel obliged to have to stand up or anything. But I'd encourage you, even if you're at home right now, just think to yourself, what are some of the things that you're really desperate over right now? What is some of the stuff where you feel like, you know what, there's been distance maybe, desertion, depression, even defeat. I'm really desperate in these situations. And maybe you're feeling really dry right now in those things. Let me tell you, it's not always bad. I'm not trying to say that's bad. What I am trying to tell you is that in that desperation, it's easy to catch fire. And for some of you, it's going to be easy to catch fire, but it's the devotion. It's in the burning. It's in the burning that you're going to find life, And so we're going to sing You Are Worthy of It All. And as a response to today, all I'm asking you to do is to take those things. God, this is what's going on. I feel so far from you. I feel so distant from you. I haven't experienced you for so long. I'm just desperate for you. It's time now to bring that stuff and to say to God, you know what? You're just worthy of it all. I realign myself to just devoting to you, to be devoted to you, to just go after you, to just do what you're asking me to do, to just carry what you're wanting me to carry. God, if I'm in the fire, put me in the hottest part of the fire so that the impurity is gone, because I just want to be devoted to you, so that ultimately at the end of all of this, I am reflecting you back to you. So I'm going to encourage you where you are, if you're comfortable, to raise up your hands. I'm going to pray for you, and then I'm going to hand over to the band. And we're just going to sing You're Worthy of It All. And in that moment, just bring those things to God, whether you're at home on a sofa or in the room. Just bring it to God. God, I pray right now that you would come, and even in our desperation that some of us are experiencing, you would start lighting the fire. We would begin to catch a light again right now, God. Even people who are watching at home would begin to catch a light again. The flame would begin to take hold, and your spirit would just start igniting us, God. But we know that that's not the life. That's not the life. It's in the burn that life emerges, God. And so I pray right now that you would turn that desperation into devotion. Devotion for you, because it's the only place that all of this stuff will end up making sense. It's the only place that everything that's going on, that's driving us to desperation, will cease to be the surface wind blowing us in a direction, God, and that in our devotion we will pick up on your deep ocean current, moving us to where we need to go. And so right now, God, I pray that you would start to light fires where people are dry, but you would lead us to devotion where the life is.